Sean, why is your documentary Cam Girls controversial?
I don't know that it is. I don't know that it is controversial. I guess I'll see, but I think anytime you're showing women empowering themselves and especially leveraging their sexuality to empower themselves, I think that's something that really threatens people and scares people a little bit. And I hope that this movie goes a long way to lessening that.
Well, I know you like subject matter that is maybe slightly different from the norm or pushes the envelope a little bit. Will you ever make a film that's not maybe just slightly pushing the envelope a little bit?
Yeah, probably. I mean, that's the thing. I really appreciate normal things. I find a lot of inspiration and beauty in the mundane and average things. So, you know, that's kind of I'm always drawn by those things, but I do always end up finding a unique twist on it or a spin on it that makes it feel unexpected. So I don't know, probably not to answer your question.
Well, forgive me, I haven't seen your other work, but from looking at your IMDb and just seeing some of the trailers and stuff, I mean, you definitely like subjects that are very sort of non-mainstream.
Yeah, people have said this one website called me the master of fringe Americana. And I was like, oh, that's cool.
Good.
That's a pretty fitting description.
Oh,
Not that I'm always going to try to live up to that, but I think that's a pretty good description of the subject matter I've tried to tackle so far.
Right. I mean, do you think you could ever do something where it's like, you know, hey, corporate dads talk about their favorite weekend pastime? Or
Yeah, maybe, but I think I could find an interesting spin on it that could maybe say something about the human condition. That's kind of what I'm interested in doing, and I do that type of work, but it's usually paid.
Okay, right.
That's how we make money.
Well, speaking of maybe possibly their favorite pastime, how did you discover the topic for Cam Girls?
Cam Girls, you know, they were on my radar a little bit. I remember it really hitting me that I had to make this film. I was watching just watching internet porn with my girlfriend. And one of those, you just hear a voice and you're like, where's that coming from? And there's a pop-up sitting there and it's some woman sitting in some room somewhere speaking to someone and you're not sure what's going on. And that kind of led me down this rabbit hole of asking myself all the types of questions that would lead you to make a documentary like this. So it kind of came from a spark of inspiration where I saw this woman and I asked all these questions about her, and me and my girlfriend started talking about it a little bit more. And then once I heard them refer to each other as Cam Girls, I thought that sounds like a title of a really, really rad documentary that I'd love to see. So like, let's just make it. Let's make it.
Well, then how did you access, because you have so many interesting women, all of them are fascinating, they're all such individuals. How did you access them and how did you get them to even allow you to come to their home?
Yeah, it was tough because I think what they deal with, I think gaining access to this community is really tough because they're used to dealing with people like me who are just fans of theirs who are trying to gain further access to their worlds, and here I am, just some dude trying to gain further access to their world. So of course I think at first we were met with some resistance, but you know what actually really helped me was that my previous film Oxyana had really had it had a compassionate tone for people that you wouldn't expect. And I think that they saw that and saw where I was going with my filmmaking, and we were able to get in with a woman named Sophia Locke who runs a thing called a Cam Mansion, and she just has a whole bunch of girls get together a couple times a year and get in a mansion and cam together. So once we got in with her, we were able to meet a lot of girls, and having her introduce us to the community really helped. It really helped. But you know, we had to earn trust with every single subject. There was no shortcut to this.
What are some of your things that you do? I mean, obviously showing them your prior work, but so that they know too that you won't cut it in a certain way, because you made all the girls look great.
Yeah.
And you showed that they were real humans. But how did you sort of get them to?
I think part of it, this might sound really hippy-dippy, it's just being ourselves and kind of putting out what you expect to get back. You know, I share with them things about my world. I'm myself. I open up. I do that on set. I do that. There's one version of me, you know, and I think that they start to understand that. And I think that the Cam Girls really appreciated too that that there was women behind this project, that my girlfriend was producing it, and there wasn't going to be some creepy thing going on, that a woman was editing it, and that we had every intention to celebrate their lifestyle and to make the mainstream kind of question their values instead of questioning the GIRLZ values. So kind of holding up a mirror to the audience. I think that they really appreciated those aspects of where we were going with this. Also, the trailer helped. We produced the trailer in order to raise the money, and they saw the tone of that. So a lot of girls were contacting us based on that.
So you do some self-disclosure. I know I've heard therapists say that they do self-disclosure to get patients to open up. So it sounds like in some ways that's also your way to establish.
It's not even necessarily to get people to open up. It's just like I'm saying, there's just kind of one version of me, and we're not trying to put anything on. There is no set agenda. So yeah, I'm just myself, and I'm kind of just like this roving pothead, and I'm pretty harmless. So I think people pick up on that, and yeah, that's it.
I noticed too with the film that you showed them all beautiful and dolled up and in front of the camera and talking with their customers. But then you had the audio, which was much more, sounded like their real selves, and some of the painful things that they went through.
Yeah.
How did you come to that decision to do it like that?
Well, I think it was important to kind of to show the disparity, the difference there between what their on-camera personas are and what their off-camera personas are. And one of the, it was an immediate thing where when we first realized we were going to make the movie, I said to myself, well, how am I going to get through and get something that's not what they're used to doing on camera? They're used to being on camera. They're used to, oh, I see what's going on here. They're savvy. So to kind of break that down a little bit, what I decided to do was conduct no on-camera interviews. So what I would do is I would sit with the girls in wherever, in their house, on their couch, on their bed. I would get real close to them. We'd get a mic nice and close, and we would just talk for a couple hours. And I would cull from those interviews, we put together the audio that kind of underlays over the film. And we're telling two different stories at once, but they really work well together. And you're hearing something that's really genuinely them. I talk about like it's their midnight voice, it's their rated R voice, it's their just talking to a friend voice. And to be able to get that, it wouldn't have been guaranteed if we would have just slapped the camera in front of them, because like I said, they're very savvy to that. So instead, we focused on getting through to their, down to the nitty-gritty of their stories in a really low-stakes environment. And I think that helps bring out their real voice.
And is that something that you just saw over time? Because so much when you go to someone's place, they're in on mode and they want to present the best PR aspect that they can. Yeah,
you just see it too often when you take out the camera and someone's like a deer in the headlights, and that puts the worst feeling over me as a filmmaker. I don't want to make someone feel like that, let alone capture it, especially for something like this. We're trying to get in there and depict what they normally do, not what they're doing like on camera for us. So to make our presence as little known as possible is super important to me. And yeah, that's really what fueled that decision was that, seeing how many times you try and fail to get somebody to act like themselves on camera. And I had experimented with this style, with doing the off-camera interview in some commercials, and I knew it could be successful in storytelling in a smaller way. And my editor and I just loved the challenge of doing it for an entire film, for a whole film that kind of is interview-based, but never really showing an interview. I dug it.
Right. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Sean, with this technique of getting their audio and just talking to them one-on-one without the camera, was this something that you learned from another filmmaker or film school?
I didn't go to film school. I have a lot of influences, but not necessarily specifically for that style. It was something that, like I said, I dabbled around with on commercials a little bit and realized how it could work. And also just kind of reading the audience and seeing what's out there currently, and kind of going against the tide a little bit, with just trying to do something that maybe is a little bit more engaging and not what you'd expect. So yeah, not necessarily one filmmaker I can point to in particular, but lots of guys over time for sure, and women.
So when you would go into their homes, how many people were with you?
Oh, small, 4 or 5 people, I think, at most. And when the shows were actually going on, when they were being filmed, just our cameraman was in there. And you know, because at that point I had already spoken to them, I'd loosened them up. We had done this podcast style interview, and that was all, like, the pressure was off them, and now they could just be themselves and kind of live their life, which we showed some of that, and do their cam show without worrying about us. And our camera guy was the only one in there when the shows were going on. But besides that, we only had a crew of 5 or 6 people at any given time.
So when that camera guy was in there, there were real live customers.
Oh yeah,
getting shows. Oh,
yeah,
wow. Okay.
yeah. We didn't contrive anything or put anything on or do anything for the camera. It was simply, you know, we would just tell the girls, like, it's no pressure. We're going to show up and we're going to film you doing what you normally do, and that's all we did. And you know, we were decisive and bold in our decision making in terms of approaching the visuals beforehand. And I think it pays off. I think it's a very interesting looking and feeling movie.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm wondering, when you would go into each home, did you had a specific idea of what you wanted to film, or you would kind of just see what happens?
You know, you try to, you know, that's where a lot of the decisiveness comes in, is, you know, me and my producer and my cinematographer sitting down beforehand and saying, oh, what types of situations are we going to find ourselves in, and how can we prepare ourselves for those? But once you're there, it's like all those things get burned down, and you're just in someone's space, so you're really just in the moment, trying to notice things, trying to pick up on things, and there's a real quick kind of in the moment conversation that's going on. But a lot of it is just relying on your core principal values that you went into that film for, and saying, I'm only existing in this world. We're not shooting slow motion, we're not shooting any straight to camera things, we're not shooting any on camera interviews, we're not shooting any handheld. So, you know, you kind of you put a box around yourself and then try to just be as creative as you can in there, and that's all we were doing with this.
Right. Did anyone try to talk you out of making the film?
Yeah, probably, but I ignore everything anyone says when it comes to that stuff. You know, there's a lot of people out there that troll documentaries in a way that, you know, kind of confounds me. You know, there's a certain, like, almost a journalistic expectation that comes along with it, and I don't know. I find a lot of the people that say you shouldn't do something, I find them to be boring, and they're living their life through their fear brain, and that's just not how I live mine.
What were some of the things thrown at you, if you can recall any of them? I was curious what they would say.
I don't know. I really don't know.
That the subject matter.
I'm not one to respond to criticism. These things speak for themselves. You know, my goal is to get to the final product and put it out there, and hope that the conversation becomes really multifaceted, and that it's starting a discussion. You know, that's my hope. So, I mean, any criticism that happens at the beginning, like, oh, why are you doing this? Why are you making that? That usually is more of an indication about the fears and insecurities of whoever's saying it. And I'm, like, super aware of that. So it's so easy to ignore.
Sure.
Yeah, it's easier and easier to ignore.
I think a lot of YouTube comments are the same thing.
Yeah.
Speaking of sort of the traditional route, with the festival route, I know with your other film, Oxiana, that you premiered at Tribeca, was it? But then you decided you weren't going to go to any more festivals.
Yeah. And
then with GIRLZ, you premiered at an adult con or something?
Oh yeah, we just did it. We did a screening at the AVN Awards in Las Vegas, kind of just to dip our toe in the water and show that industry, hey, here's something we made about the adult industry. That industry is huge. It's way bigger than the indie film community, and I'm not making films for festivals. I don't know if I'll ever have a film in a festival again. It's just not something I'm that interested in. I think festivals are something that used to keep us relevant, and now we're kind of there to keep them relevant, and I don't want to be part of some elitist hierarchy or anything like that. And it's also, you know, when you're doing film festivals and you're saying, okay, this is going to be our path and it's going to be the festival route, there's a certain complacency and laziness that comes over you, like, oh, I got my festival laurels, I'm going to be fine now, everything's going to happen for me. But we're not looking for distribution, we are the distributors. So what are we going there and doing necessarily, you know? So the way I saw it is the Tribeca was hugely helpful in getting the word out about Oxiana and helping even getting this film made. But I need a way better argument than the current one about why I should be spending a year on a festival circuit when I could be out making another film.
Right. Well, I think with Oxiana, you determined that a lot of your audience was online.
Yeah, I think the whole audience is online. You know, for all these things, we're realistic. These films are never going to be in theaters. They're not going to be a big theatrical draw. They're for niche audiences, and they're made for online audiences. You know, and even so much so that like we're abandoning the idea of the feature film, and we're just making our films whatever length they kind of need to be. You know, I feel like that's more conducive to the types of people that are watching them and the types of people that I want to watch them. You know, vying for the attention of the indie film community, it's going to send me down a path where I'm going to end up not being really true to myself and honest with myself. So we're going to bypass that whole thing.
Well, that being said, then what fuels you to make these fascinating movies? You don't want to do the festival route. You don't want them you don't want the name on the marquee.
Yeah.
Or it's not that you don't, but all that goes with that is very costly. I understand that. So then what is it that fuels you? Because there's a lot, I'm sure, that goes into making these films.
Oh, they do.
You did a beautiful job with Cam.
You know, it really, to me, it's about the process, and it's about living the process, and that's the same thing for the 5 or 6 people that end up working on these things. It really is about living the process and getting in there. And what we're trying to accomplish with any of the films is promoting people expanding their consciousness a little bit. You watch this and you see these people and you accept them for who they are and you understand what they're doing better. And this isn't just for GIRLZ, it's for all the stuff I'm trying to make. And if that can influence you to be a better person or look at people different or look at you know, your niece who's a cam girl without judgmental eyes as much, you know, all these things can really together, when you kind of look at them as this beautiful mosaic, they can increase and expand your consciousness. And if there's any goal, it's just that acceptance and understanding.
What part of that process, I'm sure there's, you know, because there's so many steps, that initial idea, reaching out to that one contact that's going to get you access. What's the most exciting for you, and then what's the toughest part?
Wow, that's an interesting question. You know what's really exciting is right before we put them out, because you know how good it is, and you kind of have a sense that people are going to respond to it, and you've gone through it all, and that's really exciting. But because once it's actually released, it's not yours anymore. It's kind of everyone's to project on it whatever they want, and I love that. So I'm really excited. Those few moments with your baby, you know, alone with your child, I really get excited by that. But you know, I feel like the most frustrating part is when you have the movie in your head and you haven't done anything yet. You haven't found a subject, you haven't found a title, you know, or you do have a title and you have ideas of how it should look and how it should feel and what the tone is, but you know, the process hasn't even begun. That can be a really anxiety-ridden process for a documentarian, because you kind of get this sense that like the world is passing you by. There's things going on and we're not out there capturing it. So it's like this super like, oh, and especially, you know, with people out there like Vice who turn these things out with such persistence, and you know, they're kind of terrible. Like, it makes it tough, because I think like, oh, I'm taking on something called GIRLZ, and it's going to take me 1.5 years to really sink my teeth into this and do it properly and do it justice and get it out there. Vice could do this in 1.5 weeks, and it kind of that can be frustrating, and it all happens in that part of the process where you're really vulnerable, because it's just an idea and you're the only one that really understands it. So that's the part of the process that I'm learning to enjoy more and getting more in the moment of, but it's the most frustrating part for sure.
Real quickly, I want to just talk about the cam girls in the film, some of whom were in committed relationships. They had families. How did that all work in terms of you're coming in with the camera, and you know, was it sensitive at some points?
Yeah, it was sensitive for a couple of the girls who didn't want to say I have a boyfriend because it might hurt them financially. But for the most part, the vast majority of them were, if they were inviting us into their life, and if we were going to take the time and money to go film with them, it was like, it's kind of got to be all or nothing. So, you know, we would show up, and if there was a boyfriend or something around, I would say, dude, man, this is your life, man. Can we film you? You know, and we weren't really met with any resistance when it came to that. I think those are the people that understand and support these women more than anyone, is their significant others. A lot of them are intricately involved in the business, but behind the scenes. So to be able to get them in there and show their normal relationships and that side of their family life, I think it starts a process of normalizing this, which is kind of the goal, you know, is to normalize this and open up a discussion about sex and sex work that, you know, that kind of maybe updates all of our values.
And lastly, the film being received in the adult film world versus indie filmmaking world. Which has been sort of more interested in the film? It seems like the adult video world.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, the adult industry has and is beginning to embrace this. You know, I don't think that they expected this to be good at all, but our screening in Vegas went really well, and we made a lot of really good connections there. And who knows what'll come of any of that stuff, but it's been really, really humbling to just see them rally around it. And you know, it's really told me a lot about that industry. And yeah, they rallied around me much more than anyone in the indie film community ever did. You know, I've had some great experiences in the indie film world, and I've also had some that would discourage most people from even continuing to do this. So that's not happening in the adult industry. They're used to dealing with adversity, and yeah, they were just so supportive, so supportive.